Well, welcome to the January 9th informational meeting. It seems like it's been weeks since we've had an informational, and I guess that's because it has been weeks since we've actually had an informational. First order of business is a report from the Fiscal Committee, and we'll give Councilor Erpenbach a few seconds to put her things down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet.
Fiscal Committee actually is in the process of looking at those nonprofit and contracts that the city has with other organizations here in town, and so you'll actually see the results of our meeting from last week as the informational meeting today. So thank you.
Very good. We look forward to it. Thank you. Good. That leads us to item number 3, which is City Council open discussion. Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick note, next week the Land Use Committee will not be meeting, so nothing on the agenda at this time.
Thank you for that information. Any other items for open discussion? Okay, seeing none, then we're going to move right ahead to our only presentation of the afternoon, and that's on nonprofits and third-party contracts, and Mr. Dave Bixler, our budget analyst, is going to present to us. Welcome, Mr. Bixler.
Thank you. Dave Bixler, Budget Analyst for the City Council. What I'm going to present today are the Fiscal Committee reviewed the third-party nonprofit contracts that were funded by the city, and these are the ones that are approved and are to go forward. I broke them down into different groups just for explanation. First one is the entities or programs that are funded by the CDBG funds, which is Community Development Block Grant Funds. And 2 of them are under the Inner Lakes Community Action Partnership. The one is Bright Futures. It's $140,000, and it's a comprehensive program targeted to assist eligible families with children, persons over 62 years of age or have a disability, a desire to increase their financial self-sufficiency through employment and to enter and maintain permanent housing. That's the assistance offered there. And then the Heartland House is $24,000, and that's for homeless families with children needing a place to live, also need help with food, employment, education, and a wide variety of other necessities. Eligible families must commit to case management services. And then the third one in this group is the Habitat for Humanity for $34,000. This is these funds are used to purchase qualified lots for the Habitat for Humanity program. Contracted services. First is the Humane Society. There's agreement for animal shelter services that goes from 2015 to 2019. And it started at $124,630 and increases 3% annually. The Helpline Center was $33,000, and they provide after-hours answering service for city's utilities. And annually, the Helpline answers over 3,000 calls regarding city business, along with other 211 requests. The 211 disaster recovery is $98,500, and this provides centralized, coordinated communication during a disaster. And during the 2013 ice storm, over 3,500 calls were answered, and 600 volunteers were mobilized to points of need. This category is services the city would need to provide. First is Children's Inn for $141,950. This is emergency shelter for women and children who are victims of domestic violence, child abuse, and neglect. In 2016, there were 1,061 intakes of women and children into emergency shelter. The second is the Compass Center for $50,000. Counselors and advocates work with victims of sexual and domestic violence. Advocates are available 24/7 and can go to the ER or a home when the victim does not want to go to the emergency room, and law enforcement requests an advocate to be present. The third is the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House for $120,000. The Hospitality House provides essential life services, a place to sleep, shower, and wash clothing. Also, shelter is provided during seasonal changes of brutally cold or extremely hot, humid weather. Without the Bishop Beverly Hospitality House, homeless people would be sleeping in more commonly places in the downtown area or impacting citizens in the adjacent neighborhoods. Joint funding agreements. First is the Sioux Falls Homeless Advisory Board, $41,000. There's a city-county joint agreement that has the county and the city funding 50% each the homeless advisory coordinator position. The Sioux Falls Multicultural Center for $187,678. This center provides 19 programs and services and operates 6 after-hours, out-of-school programs. The service also provides services that annually impact nearly 40,000 citizens. Forward Sioux Falls, $400,000. And this was a contract that is signed through 2021. The USD Discovery District, $150,000. The USD Discovery District provides innovation-focused economic development strategies, developing public-private partnerships to foster innovation-driven industry growth, quality job growth, and contributing to the city's tax base. And then the final one is, I just categorize this under tourism, Sculpture Walk, and it's for $25,000. And this funds the installation and de-installation of sculptures. An estimated 300,000 people experience Sculpture Walk each year. This free program enhances visitors' experience, which in turn benefits local merchants.
I think we've reached the question portion of your presentation.
Yes, we did, sir.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Bixler or really any member of the Fiscal Committee? Councilor Erpenbach.
If I might, Mr. Chair, I wanted to just kind of open this up to conversation. The Fiscal Committee last week talked at length about these particular line items, and I wanted to just kind of, we'd asked the two other counselors that were there with us that day, you know, what do you think? Do we need to take it to an informational meeting? It's one of those things that we've been charged and kind of challenged ourselves in terms of those particular items that are not necessarily city services and not necessarily something that all other communities do. Do we need to be doing them? And so those are the questions we've been asking ourselves. And so if I could, Councilor Erickson, I didn't say anything to you ahead of time, but if you could kind of walk us through just very briefly, what are those things when we started with Prairie View prevention? Let's talk just briefly about kind of our challenge to the committee and to the council about these numbers.
Thank you. So as we've discussed and kind of walked through last year's budgetary cut and really studying it, the Fiscal Committee took it on again to look at all of the contracts and with collaboration with Bixler. And one of those challenges that we quickly learned is some of these are federal pass-throughs, and so we needed to quickly identify some of those as well. Some are state mandates that have to be funded, or what else, you know, type thing. And then some of them are contract services. So, for example, you know, if you find a stray dog, we're certainly not going to open up a facility to take that on. We do it through the experts. And so we discussed many of those things and our responsibilities and identifying those items. This is what you're seeing in front of you is what the fiscal proposed to do. There are others that still need to be studied and looked at. I have been working with a school board member to meet with Dr. Maher in regards to two after-school programs, just to learn about them from their perspective and sit down and talk about them, as well as staff. We've yet to be able to find a time that works yet, but I'm hoping within the next week we'll be able to sit down and talk about a couple of those and continue to identify those. You have seen a few come across our consent agenda. For me, I'll express some frustration. We did communicate saying that we were going to study these and look at these. However, they just kept flying across for that. And so those we kind of just said, okay, fine, since they're on consent and you know, we just let them go through. One was last week that we actually sent back because the numbers didn't match. But that's been part of the conversation as well. I don't know if there's other questions, or I certainly would love to hear from anyone with an opinion on this or questions for Bixler, as well as the fiscal committee.
Well, and then just to clarify, the ones that Mr. Bixler presented today are the ones that that the fiscal committee is recommending we don't touch. That
Correct.
we allow those they have been approved in the 2018 budget, and obviously in the 2017 budget they were as well. They've been approved, and we were recommending that these not change for the reasons that's why Mr. Bixler has long explanations on those slides, and each of you has a copy, and they're available for the public. These are the ones we agree that these are the ones that need to stay in the budget. We need to fund, in part because some of them are contracts, some are pass-throughs, some are. If we didn't have Children's Inn, we'd be out building some kind of shelter somewhere as a city, and so for us to contract for those services is a dramatic savings for the taxpayers, and so that was kind of the reason for bringing this presentation in terms of these are the ones we're keeping or are suggesting that we're keeping. And yeah, I would open it up for questions and comments from the rest of the group.
Councillor Staley.
I appreciate showing some scrutiny on our spending, and I think it's good to evaluate the purpose of anything we're using our tax dollars for. The question I guess I have is if we don't do anything with these, they're already provided for in the budget. I mean, what happens if we just leave it as it is? And let me also say, I think we're all aware that, I mean, every administration has priorities. We're coming into a new administration, and I think everything could be flipped upside down, you know, reevaluated, scrutiny being maybe given to the Parks Department, or, I mean, who knows? So I would be more inclined to say, let's just allow these entities to do what they're doing, give them notice that they will have to show accountability, because I think that's due diligence. But just maybe you can explain to me why we would want to, you know, not include them or cut back.
A couple of clarifications. The ones that you see on the list today are the ones that we have, again, looked through as a committee and said these are ones that we'll keep. We have already put them on notice. We have already required from them more in-depth information about who they are, what they do, what their expenses are, what their budgets look like. And so we have started that process a couple of years ago. This is something that has been step by step by step. This list that you're not seeing today, but that was on our committee agenda last week, was that list of ones that we are going to bring them into the committee, and they're going to speak to the committee. They'll each have a few minutes to, again, they have filled out a form that tells us who they are and what they do, but we're going to put them up where Mr. Bixler is now, and we're going to have those conversations about why should the city continue to fund you? What sort of benefit is there to the city portion of their budget? You know, that's one of the things that we keep running into, is that, you know, they may have a bajillion-dollar budget, but our portion of it, what does the city taxpayer portion do to that budget? And so that's what we're working on. And I guess I would caution us then as a council to not think in terms of administrations, but let's think in terms of that we are the council, we are the budgetary and the policy-making body of this community, and each one of these contracts comes to us. Whether it's this mayor or that mayor or, you know, a mayor from Mars, it doesn't matter who the mayor is. This council controls the budget and controls whether we spend that money or not. And so I would encourage us to, and I realize I'm not going to be here after May, but I would encourage us to think of ourselves as a group and as a policy-making body that continues on. Regardless of the faces sitting up here, this policy-making body continues on, and we need to continue to do this kind of work and not just sit back and go, let's wait for the next mayor because it doesn't matter anymore.
Okay, well said, Councillor. Councillor Staley.
Okay, so in response to that, I'm still saying that, first of all, I wasn't aware that these conversations happened a few years ago because, well, I mean, I wasn't in on any of that. That must have happened before I came on board.
Happened in public meetings right here in this room.
Well, as far as scrutinizing all these things you're talking about, I was not, that didn't happen since I've been on the council. Prairie View Prevention did, but these other ones did not. So I do think that it's about priorities, and I'm saying, we can make a decision now. If we decide to cut the funding for some of these other entities, that's a big deal. And I think that could be, I mean, we can make a decision as a group to do that. It could be hopefully reversed, and I would want to say that to the public, again, that moving forward, we can always reprioritize and reevaluate what we're spending our money on. I mean, Prairie View Prevention could come back in again. Just because they're out now doesn't mean they couldn't get some funding in the future. So I think it's all fluid. That's all I wanted to say. I'm not saying I'm not looking at it, but just my 2 cents worth.
Councillor Neitzer.
Going forward, are there going to be a written contract for every single one that lays out what they're supposed to do, so we have no blank checks, as it were?
There is currently, Councillor Neitzer, there are contracts with each of these organizations. They have to sign in order to get the money.
We do. Okay, great. And then what would be the next step in terms of these? Is this something you just communicate to the administration, and then as they're building the next budget, the 2019 budget, they have the kind of their, I mean, how do you mechanically tell them?
I think we just go, hey, no, seriously, it will come as council action as those contracts come through. Okay. But to the ones that we're going to look at more closely as a committee, that will also be public in a public meeting, and that'll be very clear that this will be our recommendation to council, that we're going to keep them all the same, or we're going to cut this one or not that one. It will all come through as a recommendation to council, and it will be up to this group again as the policy and budgetary body.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks.
Councillor Erickson.
Thank you, and I'll just add on to that a little bit. That's really the same process that we followed with the other institution that we were discussing as well, and so we'll follow that same guideline. The other thing that I just want to echo with Councillor Erpenbach is the fact that we do control the purse strings, and so in my time on the council, this hasn't happened a whole lot. You know, we argue and fight over peanuts. I mean, we're talking about a very tiny portion of what the budget is. I mean, we discussed it with the amendment that Councillor Starr had, is how much we were really talking about. It was like 0.0 some percent, 0.06% or something like that, which was a really small part, but things that are important to this council that we feel that we should be funding. And each of us, some of these mean something different to each of us, a little differently, and each of us finds value in them a little bit differently. You know, and we were really challenged to find what is the role of government. And that statement alone is so unique depending on who you ask. I could ask each of us to go around the room, and as well as the audience, to say, what does the role of government mean to you? And it's very unique. You're going to get a different answer from every single person. And so what we are saying as a council and as the fiscal committee, as well as we've talked about these budget amendments when we went through the budget process, is these are important to us, and it is about priorities. And so we feel that there can be other areas in the budget that can come up with the savings and fund some of these. There will be changes in the future, and the next administration will have different priorities, as well as the council. But we are the ones sitting in these chairs now that we need to make those decisions and continue on. And so we'll have a few more that we'll look at, and everyone is welcome to attend those fiscal committees. I welcome you all to join. Councillor Erpenbach has welcomed everyone to have questions, have feedback. It's open, and so we'll have those questions, and there's no guarantee of what will happen with that, but that's what we're doing here again. And so this is the suggestion of the fiscal committee to leave what was already passed. There's no council action. We already passed this. And so it's just a matter of this is what fiscal was looking at bringing forward, and educating everyone on what these organizations do. And then we'll have the next steps as well.
Councillor Staley, you had something earlier?
No, well, and I was just going to say, with Forward Sioux Falls, I remember when we first got on the council, we gave them I think it was a 5-year contract. And then if I see that they're in the list of people who are going to be saved, entities that are going to make it through. But if we ever wanted to say to them, you're making the cut, then how do you handle that when you've signed a contract with them? Do you just negate the contract, or legally do we just vote to renege on the?
I can't remember if I may, Mr. Chair. There is language in there that I think says it's subject to every year. I don't know the exact language in that without having it in front of me, but I believe there is that language in the contract that should, I don't think it's for every contract, so you would have to look at each specific contract, and if, council member whoever wants to make some sort of increase or decrease, I believe that could potentially happen with that particular contract, but I don't believe any of the other ones have that same language in there because they're a year-to-year contract. For example,
Right.
The Compass Center is a year-to-year.
And that, I had a concern, and Councilor Urpenbach maybe remembers that because I think she agreed with me, but we were giving them a 5-year contract, and we weren't giving other nonprofits that. So I think I voted no on that along with a few of the other council members, but just because I thought they should be up for reevaluation every year like everyone else is. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think what's important here is that number one, that all of these entities have a well-defined problem as to what they're trying to address, and that and then that they have deliverables and how they're going to address these issues, and then that there's measurables too to ensure that they are delivering upon what they claim they are. And I think that's our role as a council, to make that determination as to whether we go forward in the future then with these contracts. So if there aren't any other questions, last call for questions. Comments, Mr. Bixler?
Yeah, excuse me. One point I want to make is that 2 weeks ago there was one of these contracts that came through, and it was through Southeast Behavioral Health, and it was for the PATH program, and it was approved, but it was also due to a match from the federal government that the timing needed to be, so it needed to come through. I have been in contact with the entities, and they are more than happy, and they will be coming in to do a presentation on their funding of what they've gotten. And it's $57,000, and they're more than happy to come in and talk about their program. So everybody's been very forthcoming in their information.
Okay,
And
very
then
good.
the one tonight is the Sioux Falls Arts Council that was pulled last week just due to a typographical error, and it's corrected this week.
Very good, thank you.
If I might, Mr.
Yes,
Chair, I just
Councilor
wanted to
Urpenbach.
thank Mr. Bixler for his help. He's kept this committee kind of organized, and then as you see the slides and the description of all the things that are happening, he's really, I mean, this is the benefit of having full-time staff that's helping the council, is that it's making a huge difference in the way that we're walking through this process. As part-time council members, he's really been our backup here, so I appreciate your work on this, I really do.
And Councilor Urpenbach, I'd like to thank you as chair of the fiscal committee for taking on this task, and as well as the members of the fiscal committee for taking on this task.
It's a good team.
Yep. Thank you very much. Well, that's our only presentation for the afternoon, so this meeting is adjourned.